Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Unlearning Relearning Water. My name is Douwe van der Meer, and I'm co-hosting this episode with Shahnur Hassan. And today we are here to discuss hydrological modeling. So hydrological models are powerful tools that shape how water is known, represented, and governed. Their strength lies in their capacity to simplify, represent, predict, offering a way to make complex systems legible. And at the same time, hydrological models are increasingly critiqued for their limited sensitivity to local context, design biases, and reliance on flawed or incomplete data. The models can reduce political questions, such as water allocation, into purely technical problems, obscuring underlying issues of justice. And to discuss models today, we are joined by four fantastic speakers, and we'll now start with the first one of those, Tamerlan Mehdiyev. Tamerlan is a PhD student in meteorology and a lecturer at Baku State University. His interests lie at the intersection of climate science, water resources, and geospatial analysis. He teaches courses in geographical information systems, meteorology, oceanography, emphasizing practical applications, field experience, and the use of modern analytical tools to solve environmental challenges. So, Tamerlan, the floor is yours.
Hello everyone, thanks Davi for introduction and thanks for having me. I'd like to share my screen presentation. Just give me a second. How do I do that? Oops. Share screen. Sorry for delay. This.
Do you need assistance, Tamerlan?
No, I just found it. I think it's open. Is it? No?
Not yet. Sometimes it may take a few seconds. If you share, yes, it's working now.
Good. Okay. Hello again, everyone. Here, I'm not a model developer, just for heads up. I'm not a modeler also, but I am, as a researcher, I have some experience in working with models, hydrologic models, and applying them in my research. I have some experience for this, and I'll try to share my thoughts and experience on this discussion. I'll start with the introduction about hydrologic models and hydraulic models just a little bit. So what you see is a diagram explaining the basic concept of conservation of mass that basically defines hydrologic models. What you see is the inflow minus outflow equal to a change in storage. And you have inflow in the form of rainfall, then some of them are intercepted by the canopies of vegetation or lost in surface depressions and etc. Then you transform, then you add base flow, and you get stream flow. In this picture, you see like how hydrologic models work. They both route the hydraulic models and the hydrologic models, but they do it in a bit different way. For example, hydraulic model doesn't just use conservation of mass, it solves also conservation of momentum, it solves Saint Venant equations, shallow water equations, it calculates how forces like gravity, geometry, water pressure, friction, all of this physically push and pull water through the downstream. Both route the water, but in different way. The hydrologic model will not see breach, it won't mind it, but hydraulic model would see it, and you would see velocity high skyrocketing in the opening section of breach, etc. Here what you see are some of the maps from our draft paper. On the right map, what you see is stream power map. It is a physical map. The variables extracted coming from the model itself. It only shows those. It only includes the stream power equation, which includes water weight, discharge, energy slope. It is technically a rigorous map, but it cannot tell you who is actually at risk. It only shows where physical force is strong. It does not include any population data. That's not a modeling failure, that's a scope decision. So instead of explaining this as a risk map, we should acknowledge the limits, gaps, and explain accordingly in a paper, which we're going to do. Some models seem to be in search of problem. You might have parties that are willing to use hydrologic or hydraulic models to justify their case. One of these such cases is from Southern Nevada. It's called Southern Nevada groundwater case development project. It was worth of $15 billion, and the project aimed to extract groundwater from rural valleys in Southern Nevada and transport to Las Vegas. But the project faced some opposition by local stakeholders. One of them was Cleveland Ranch. Basically, they believed that it would affect their operations in the southern Nevada, because the same ranch would rely on the same groundwater, same water sources that the project aimed to extract. Under the Nevada law, the project could claim water if pumping it was sustainable, and the project framed it as they are only capturing the unused evapotranspiration. Through legal discovery, the Cleveland Ranch obtained the model the project made, and they showed that it is not scientifically applicable and impossible. It is impossible. So despite the showing the evidence, the project got approved by the local judicial system, and the state engineer justified his written decision justified this by arguing that he and the applicant were only required to show the water budget balanced on the paper. He did not dispute accuracy of model prediction. So the Cleveland Ranch, the expert consultants extended the project model to 2,000 years, and they showed that after like a century or so, the project will dewater the aquifers in neighboring valleys. Consequently, after 30 years of legal battles, planning, and massive financial investment, the project got dumped and forgotten in 2020. This is the output of that extended model output done by Cleveland Ranch.
Tamerlan, do you have a slide sync to the storyline? We only can see the first slide of your story.
Oh, no.
It's absolutely fine. If you can also
Okay.
take us through.
How do I do that then? Could you assist me?
You can just press the usual arrow. Do you see the arrow of the slides? Navigate forward.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
there.
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
No worries.
Okay. Thank you very much. So this is actually the model output that extended to 2,000 years. So this is one problem with the models, application of models. You have no one model, but you have many multiple interpretations. For example, this Nevada case highlights the water models are not, the hydrological models are not just perfectly objective. They have use, they are useful, but the interpretation of data is heavily influenced by the legal rules, personal values, competing interests of those involved in water policy. And this case also further outlines the transparency, which can lead different consequences for different actors. For the project, for example, when the model subjected to independent scrutiny, it backfired. However, for the Cleveland Ranch, it became a savior. Speaking of competing interests, the data and application providers are also important part of this discussion. From media, we often see how these providers are politicized. One example is the dispute between the current president of United States with the agencies, the US agencies like NOAA and the National Weather Service. So basically, the current president of the United States believe that goes after the agencies that push for climate change, and this impacted the services. Like several offices stopped weather balloon launches. The databases of NOAA and the website, some of them went offline, and even the National Weather Service was also target of the domestic terrorism threats for conspiracy theories regarding weaponizing the weather. This is actually a small cut from sitcom that I'd like to show, and I think it is very relevant. It's only 30 seconds. A few things that I'd like to leave you with. So behind almost every type of data model, there might be a political attribution decision about what got measured and what did not. And perhaps no one should ever claim that the machine knows everything. For me, the critical next step involves developing models in a way that foster public engagement and understanding. Rather than scientists developing models in isolation and presenting finished outputs, the participatory approaches involve community members, decision makers, and researchers working together throughout the model design, simulation, and evaluation stages. Participatory models help to build trust, incorporate local knowledge, and enhances the legitimacy of the project. However, there are many challenges to be addressed, and I think maybe we can talk about that too. Thank you very much. That's it. I'd like to thank you all, and any question you have, I'll be happy to answer.
Yes, and thank you, Tamerlan, for the presentation and for reminding us of the educational value of sitcoms. I didn't expect that today.
Thank you.
So now we turn to our next speaker, Rozemarijn Horst. She works as a program manager on collectively driving digitalization for the Dutch water authorities, as well as freelancer. Her work focuses specifically on inter- and transdisciplinary cooperation and the everyday practices of diplomats, policymakers, scientists, consultants, and donors. Rozemarijn previously worked at Wageningen University, where she explores models in the context of transboundary water conflict, and at IHE Delft Institute for Water Education. So Rozemarijn, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and great to be here. I also have a small thing to show, although I cannot see it now. I think. So I'm here because I spent the last 4 years or 4.5 years of my career reflecting on my own practices as not a modeler. I'm not a modeler. I'm a social scientist trained as working on international relations and then on social geography. And I started my career as a freelancer and then teaching water diplomacy. So I was thinking about how can we facilitate cooperation over water across borders, and my interest came from and grew from working with engineers. So this became my niche. How can we transcend knowledge from the social sciences and engineering and build something good together? And I was very enthusiastic and also willing to build my career, but also naive in that sense. So I thought, okay, through my work, I can really contribute to a better world. I still hope and aspire to do so, but I think it's quite complex. And in my career, I focused on transboundary water, and I became more known of working as a social scientist with engineers. And gradually, I was asked also to be the social scientist to facilitate on how do we make the models that we are making connect with the place that we are implementing it in. And what was happening is that most of the time in these kind of projects, I was asked when the project was already thought out or the model was already built. So I was sort of an add-on to the program, trying to do some, I would say, magic almost, to make a model or an idea that was already there fit in a situation it might not really fit in. And after 2 or 3 projects, I was like, something is going wrong, it's not working. And what is not working? And what is my part of it? And if I want to do these projects in the future, how can I contribute in an effective way? And this was the starting point of my PhD question. And what you see, what I'm presenting here, I see some of you already squinting because it's a little bit small. I developed a graphic novel based on what I learned. And I will not go to it completely, I can send it to you. But the most important part is if we look at models, they're quite complex. So how can I understand them and how can I understand the relations that they have in the world? And I defined them or looked at them as a constellation, so socio-technical objects as a constellation of visions of the future. What do we want to change? And this is, I would say, in every model, there's an aspiration for change, even if it's just trying to understand what the world looks like and it seems completely neutral. You go into this model and modeling with a reason, right? You want to understand the world for a reason. And that reason is always a certain aspired change. Then also, how does A relate to B? And why is A more important to B? And why did you not include C, for instance, is the way that you see the world. So what does the world look like, and what is the worldview? So why do you include vegetation or do you not include vegetation? What kind of vegetation is the worldview? Then there's also expertise involved. So the way that we do modeling, a hydrologist might make a very different model than an economist. So your expertise and your way of doing things influences the tools that you have. And of course, it's very much related to how you see the world as well. And then the model is enabled or limited by the materiality. So the computers that we have, the dashboards that we make, the maps. So how does the model exist in the world and how can we engage with it? And I would say that also models can be pen on paper. For instance, you sit in a cafe, you drink a cup of coffee and you draw something on paper, a way that the world works. That might also be a model that might also start to do things in the world. And I think that the way I look at models, they already do something before they are maybe pen on paper. They might also have a dream. There might be a dream in our world, our mind. So the idea of, okay, we're going to model already does something. So I was looking at what do these models do in the world? How do they influence us? And at what points in this trajectory of the model can we intervene or should we do something different? And I looked at projects that I was involved in myself or where Dutch people were involved, Dutch money. I'm from the Netherlands myself. And I thought, if I want to change something, let's look at my own surrounding. But these were models that we brought from the Netherlands somewhere else. So this is always a very interesting thing. And I would say also, even if we would have applied them in the Netherlands, for instance, we make them in a university and we apply them in a region with farmers, for instance, I would already say that it travels from the university, from a very different culture, from a very different place to another place where the model is applied to. So actually what I learned might apply to any situation, whether it's another country or whether you go to another region. And the case that I want to talk with you about is the case that I focused on in the Kaveri River. So there was a project that we did. I worked at IHE Delft. I was a consultant over there, and the project that we did was connected to the Water Accounting Plus model. So it looks at the stocks and flows of a basin, see how you use it and what is left in the end. And the idea is that you can manage the water more optimally. So this is a great idea, and it also got a lot of support from the Dutch government. They said, wow, this is great, we need to support it, and we need to globally do it. And it's still actually a big project that's going on with support of the Dutch government. The Asian Development Bank found it important, but it's also because a flow of money went from the Netherlands to the Asian Development Bank, so it was Dutch money that was spent on the project. And the Indian government was also very interested in it. And they were interested in it because water is, transboundary water is a national affair, but what happens with water in the nations itself or in the states is a statal affair. So as soon as there is competition between some states or conflict, it goes to the Supreme Court, and then the national government can say something about it, but otherwise water is a statal affair, not a national affair. But because of the water conflicts that were arising, also to more use, the national government, also because they wanted to have more influence, I would say, or more centralized ruling, that's a tendency that's going on, knowing more about the water and having more say about what flows where and how these problems should be solved was an ideal from the central government. So knowing what flows where and how would give the central government also power. So these kind of models were also intended to centralized control, I would say. And the national government, they gave an assignment, said, okay, let's do this water accounting plus, but do it in the most challenging context you can find. And the Kaveri conflict is one of the most longest term conflicts. And they thought, okay, if you can get neutral data, then perhaps you can solve the issue. The problem was that there was a court case on who gets what in terms of in moments of drought, and that the court ruled, the Supreme Court, in the second ruling, after many years, and I think based on all data, they said if there is a case of drought, the farmers who need water the most should get the water first. But how do you decide it? So then Water Accounting Plus was amazing to come in, because you have an assessment of water availability at pixel level. You can see what goes where is the drought, and what kind of farmers would need the water first. The problem was when we started the project and we were educating or teaching Indian engineers actually to make the model became, it seemed very complex. So even with a group of 12 engineers, not everyone understood the complete model, so everybody understood parts of it. Data was very difficult to collect, of course. There were no local or regional people involved in the project because it was deemed too sensitive also. So the moment that the model was presented, it was also a very sensitive moment, because they didn't know how the local representatives would react. And what they came to in the meeting, we had a meeting for two days, and the model was not accepted. It was even rejected. So for many reasons, you can say, okay, there is a tendency for central control. The states would of course, say no, but why? And I concluded that the top-down and national approach, it did not build trust with the federal states. Then the complexity of the model made it very easy to say, look, I don't understand what is going on. I don't know how we come to this outcome, so I reject it. I cannot check. Another one was that in the worldview of the model, it only saw basin, the whole basin and reservoirs and groundwater. But what the states wanted to discuss was how many water was in the reservoirs. And the model itself was not able to model reservoirs. So what was most important in the discussion with the state was not what was not inside of the model. So there was a big mismatch. And I think most centrally is that Water Accounting Plus was also always intended to manage, to improve productivity, to get the farmers to act, while the states just wanted to monitor. And then from the monitoring and understanding based, having a discussion. So there was a complete mismatch in what we did. And one of the things that I think we should really have done differently is we came with, a hammer and a nail, So you come with a hammer, so you look for your nail. And we never checked first, what do they want? And how can we build this trust? So this whole political process was completely ignored. And I think the problem was that we already started modeling without really understanding what was going on. And this classic case, I think I wanted to share with you also as a reflection on why this effort was not helpful in the end and could even be detrimental in cases as well, and what we could have done differently. I'll stop sharing now.
Yes, thank you very much, Rozemarijn, and also for being so reflective also on this project. And just a quick question, could you maybe share the graphic novel with the participants, maybe in the chat, or is it not published yet? Or
no, I would love to. I will. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Then I'd like to invite the other three speakers, so Tamerlan, Perna, Willem, if you maybe have some really quick reflections to share at this stage. You're also welcome to keep them for yourself until the end of the episode for the Q&A. And also to the other participants in this episode, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat, and then we'll discuss them in the end. So Tamerlan, Perna, Willem, any comments, quick thoughts before we move on to the next speakers? Well, I think in that case, I'll just hand over to my colleague Shahnor for the second half of this episode.
Thank you, Dave. And thanks to our first two speakers. With that note, I would like to invite Prerna, our next speaker, who is a climate adaptation researcher in India, working across disaster risk, locally led adaptation, and knowledge systems. Prerna holds a PhD in civil and environmental engineering from Georgia Tech, with experiences in the UNDP and ADPC, national and local governments in Asia, and community-based organizations across Global South. Prerna, over to you with your story.
Thank you so much, Shahnor. And what a great panel you've put together. So much expertise in this room already across technical, the social, and the meta of hydrological modeling. And I resonated a lot with what Tamerlan was just saying. What I would like to speak and bring here would be from an adaptation practitioner's perspective, and trying to bring some voices of the communities on ground. So as I said, I could connect with a lot of challenges that Rozemarijn was bringing through in implementing the models on the ground at the national and policy scale. And a lot of it stems down to the people on the ground who would be implementing it, who would be using it. And I want to talk about how do we actually know if any scientific or technological solution in the space of climates, specifically including hydrological models, works once it leaves the lab and lands on the ground for the people it is supposedly designed to help. And in my work, I've engaged with hundreds and hundreds of community-based organizations working very closely with the individuals on the ground across Global South to understand how do we bridge this divide between scientific, technical research advancements in the climate space and the real life use case it fits. How do we actually make it work? Because there is so much value and potential in doing that. And the question keeps breaking down, at least in my experience, to some three factors: accuracy, relevance, and trust. So I would like to talk through these pieces and what I saw from the community perspective on what they mean. So in terms of accuracy, I don't just mean the right model design and the right methods and the right formulas to use. We know that that's the case. Our scientists are brilliant in doing that. But more so, what data was allowed to feed into the model for the first place. If a model is trained on clean, official data, the reality of the undocumented, the informal, the fast-moving, changing ground perspectives is just simply not there. And it's wrong data in, wrong data out, right? And it might not be a negligence of a modeler. When in the smallest scales of modeling, I also looked for the best, most credible data available. But that's where the question of what is the right data comes in. And a variety of real-life issues just say, documentation systems just haven't kept pace, sometimes for political reasons, sometimes just because the speed of climate crisis and migration and work pattern changes do not, they outrun the speed of paperwork for it to get documented. And anything that is invisible, anyone that is invisible in official records that this data feeds into the model stays invisible in planning and action that follows. And that's where the accuracy of what comes out, and more importantly, what goes into the model really plays a big role in its success. And the second factor I would like to talk about is relevance. And this is one piece I do think that the climate field is actually getting better at, especially if you look at heat early warning systems, for example. Now the information that reaches people is not that the temperature will rise, but more so, what do you do with it? Like, how does it impact your health, and how do you manage that, like those action items? And this is something that we would have to consider just as important in hydrological modeling use case as well. Getting the interpretation of the results right, like translating this is what the model is telling me to this is what it means to you, and this is what you need to do based on the results. And it means real investment, not as a communication afterthought, but as the piece of information that informs the design at the very start of the model development process. So while the action from the results probably will not change the science behind how a modeler would develop it, but it would change the input parameters, like what Rozemarijn was talking about, something that is designed for groundwater doesn't consider reservoirs, which is a critical input component for the output that we need, right? So I think what is relevant to the final user, that being something known at the very, very start of thinking about modeling, the model you're developing is critical in this case. And then the third piece here is again something building on what Rozemarijn's bringing is trust. And this is a factor that is often least visible, but makes a big difference in success of any technological solution on ground, including hydrological models. And what we have noticed is that trust tracks distance, the distance between who generates the data that feeds the model and who is expected to act on what comes out of it. And this actually circles back to the accuracy point. If the people on the ground know that their information is not informing the tool that they are supposed to use, they know that it's not capturing their lived reality. They do not, obviously will not trust the information because they know it's not right. And then fixing, so this has been accuracy, relevance, and trust has frequently, recurringly come through as defining the success of any of the technological solutions being relevant on the ground. And fixing these aspects, I think, can make a huge difference in bringing this excellent work that our scientific community is doing to being used on ground and having the impact that they aim to do. And one of the obvious ways that I have observed is through co-creation. And I think it's not a new term. We all probably know of it, aware of it, and have thought about it. I would like to bring in a live example of this that's working on the ground, or at least is showing signs of working on the ground. I work with the 14 Trees Foundation, which is a community-led ecosystem restoration initiative in Maharashtra. It has been running for 13 years now. And water sits at the foundation of the climate action there. It's not designed as a hydrological project, and anything we do around water is not for that reasoning. But because water is what restoration and community livelihood and community sustenance depends on. And after a decade or so of the intervention successfully running, now many hydrological modelers have started to take an interest in the project to understand the system, to understand the hydrology behind it, and how can we leverage this insight for good. And I think, and this is my hypothesis, that these models will be just and they will be successful in achieving their objective, mainly because the data that they're arriving at looks different. We track water levels across all the water resources in that ecosystem at a fixed granular cadence, and that is part of people's paid work. And at the same time, that data is something that the local community people around are actively using for their own lives, for their own decision making, day to day. Where do they go and fetch water from this summer because this pond has more water, this pond is percolating a lot more, and so and so. And they're not running a scientific analysis on it, but the chronological records that they go and capture on a bi-weekly basis as part of their work sits in their lived memory. And they're observing the patterns in the year on year, and they're using it in their decision making. So now I have a much stronger confidence that anything that is built using this data and any inference that comes out of it will be trusted by the community because they know that it's their information. They know the credibility of it. They have used that information for their own good. So I think for me, I would close this by saying that the real starting point of bringing justice and modeling and any tech advancements in our space is not to bring participation on the outputs of it so that people understand the outputs, but more so co-creation, the very first step of model development, from even the conceptual stages of model development. And then if the data that is with the people, is owned with the people who generate and then use it, the aspects of accuracy, relevance, and trust just become inbuilt, automatic part of the system. So those are some of the perspectives from the community that I could bring in. Would love to chat more and hear other people's perspectives.
Thank you so much for bringing the brilliant insights from the ground, the reality for which the models are conceptualized. With that note, I would also like to reiterate to all of our participants, if you have any questions, any ideas, any thoughts that dissonate or resonate with our speakers, feel free to use the chat box. And now this is time to welcome our last speakers for today, who is Willem van Deursen, who is a senior expert in integrated water resources management and the founder of Carthago Consultancy, based in Rotterdam, the Netherlands. Willem's work focuses on simulation modeling and the use of model results in policy and decision-making processes. He has worked on integrated water management challenges for over 25 years, combining hydrology with livelihood, socioeconomic, and governance issues. Willem, it's a pleasure to welcome you again in our episode 10 of Unlearning Relearning Water series.
Okay, Shanur Dalle, thank you very much for organizing this interesting sessions. Co-presenters, this is great. You have talked about all the things that I need to talk about, so thank you very much. When I talk to students about modeling, there's two lessons that I need to learn them, that I need to teach them. And the first one is you have to trust your models. Your models go beyond simple observations. They make things that we cannot see, they make it visible. If we talk about groundwater flows, we cannot see groundwater flows, but models allows us to talk about it as if it really exists and if we can start managing it. It allows you to test interventions before you do them in the field and before you start destroying local communities, regions, whatever, you can test them in your models. They compress space and time, so we don't have to wait for 100 years, or as Tamerlan was saying, for 2000 years, and we can talk about future, long-term future, short-term futures. So they compress space and time. So lesson number one, trust your models. They teach you something very valuable. Yeah. Then comes lesson number two, and that is don't trust your models. That's maybe the more difficult question here. Model is a simplification of reality. And it means it is described in terms that the developer of the model had available, that he knew and that he understood. It talks about concepts that the developer of the model had available and that he could use. It talks about concepts that are, let's say, sufficiently numerical to be modeled. Yeah, it has to have some numerical background to it. Everything outside of those choices is not in your model. It becomes absent. It's not wrong, it's not disproven, but it's just not there. Yeah. That means that the things that are in the model now becomes more important, and the things that are outside your model now become less important. That means that your model is now monopolizing what is expertise and what is knowledge. We talk about things that are in the model. What's missing is less important. So governance failure is not there, local communities are not there, social conflicts over water allocation, nothing is there. So that means these things tend to become less important. Yeah. Mistrust your models. They are a simplification of reality. How did we get to this situation? Humanity has been managing water for 5,000, 9,000 years, I don't know, for a very, very, very long time. Quite successful empires were built on that. You have seen civilizations come and go 9,000 years. Only the last 100 years we see models. Yeah, models is the younger expert who comes to the table. And when he comes to the table, he assumes the chair of the leader. Yeah, the front chair in the whole thing. We only talk about models now, and we don't talk about other things. Yeah, models have been there only for 100 years, not more than that. We know how to manage water. We know how to manage landscapes. We seem to have forgotten the lessons that we learned from 9,000 years of managing landscapes. How did we get to this situation? What is the mental model behind it? Modeling is based on that we can identify components. And with these components, we can identify laws of nature, laws of gravity, all those kind of laws. And it talks about components. Yeah, that's a very good system if we want to describe an electronics circuit. Yeah, you know your resistors, you know your capacitors, you know your transistors. You know the rules that govern them. You know the law of Ohm. You know the law, all those laws. You build a circuit and it acts just as you planned it to do. Yeah, all the components are there, all the laws are there, and it works. Yeah. Now think of your hydrological system, your water system. Do we have those components? Do we have distinct components that we can separate from other components? Not really. We're talking about ground soil layers as if they exist. They don't exist. They are an artifact that we made. Yeah, we talk about river stretches as if they really exist. They don't exist. They are artifacts that we built into our models. Yeah, we talk about natural laws, the physical laws that govern the system. We only know one law, and that is water flows downhill, and we don't know any other laws here. So we are pretending that we are building an electronic circuit out of a system that doesn't have the components that we need and that doesn't have the physical laws that we need. So we discretize the whole thing and we make it into a finite grid, and we're going to apply our rules to it. Yeah, the whole underlying foundation is a little bit shaky, is a little bit weak. Let's see where we are. Okay, that brings us to the situation that we have a model that is only approximation of what reality is. Yeah, we need to use an approximation, we need to use parameterization, and we use calibration for getting our model under control. What does that mean? That there's a lot of room for improvement. Yeah, we can do better parameterization, we can do better optimization, we can do better calibration. Yeah, we go for more detailed, higher resolution, smaller time steps, more processes included. But the foundation on which we build the model still remains shaky. We don't have those components. They are artifacts in our modeling. Yeah. The model is never satisfied. There's never going to be a good model. You always want to add more detail to it. You always want to add more processes to it. It never answers the question that you really want to answer. That brings us to the situation that you see in everyone who has done modeling knows that your model is never finished. There's always room for improvement. It means your model is never satisfied. It means your model is hungry. Your model keeps on eating your budget. Yeah. You started modeling with a question that was outside of the domain of modeling. You had to improve the livelihood of local communities. You had to deal with international governance of water. Now your model takes over. Your model eats away all your budget. The outcome of your project will be a model, yeah? But you have forgotten to answer the question why you started modeling in the first place. The interesting thing that I think that you need to learn is how to trust your model. They tell you something very useful. They tell you something you did not know without the modeling. The other very important thing is mistrust your models, because they will eat away your entire project and you end up in the situation where we are. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Willem, and thank you for bringing this metaphor forward of hungry models. Indeed, you made them appear hungry for data, for more updates and resources. I would like to now invite all our speakers for a reflection, joint reflection, and also to our participants. As our speakers reflect on your questions and on each other's perspective, we welcome our participants to share their thoughts. You can do so by raising your hands, and then we would allow you to join in. And there is a question that emerged in the chat asked by Shiba Kurian, one of our participants. As all of you, all our speakers have re-emphasized and reiterated on moving beyond the technical aspects of this hydrological modeling. So this larger question is how to address the questions of ground realities, inclusion, and justice in the modeling. And how do we convince the funders and technocrats and governments who push for technical solutions over socially grounded solutions? So the floor is all yours. I would like to begin with our speakers, and then our participants, please raise your hand.
So I just,
Willem, sure.
I just responded to it in chat as well. And I think one of the solutions I feel like might work, and I feel like has worked with me personally as an engineer, is to just change how the people who design these technical solutions think, as in early stages of training and education, sort of what Willem is doing in his to his students. I think they would be a lot more socially grounded. The tools that they will develop will understand the need of connecting with the community, connecting with what's the real on-ground challenges. So even if the government and decision makers focus more on technical solutions or prioritize them, the people developing them can embed the grounding, community grounding and social grounding as part of their approach. And I think that bypasses a whole lot of bigger challenges to solve while we try and fix those. I think a lot of our educationalists and champions in this space were creating these budding technical experts could play a huge role in making this actionable.
Thank you, Prerna. Rozemarijn, would you like to add?
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoy the conversation, and one of my biggest learnings is both to trust your model and distrust your model. Thank you, Willem, for this. I want to join your courses. I think related to this, one of the most important lessons for me was to get out of model land. So there's a beautiful book about it by Erica Thompson. And one of the things that models do is indeed they drag you into the land that is created by the model, and somehow we cannot think outside of it. So the model becomes our reality. So I think the first thing that we can do is get out of it. Don't start modeling. Just if the project is to model, you're already taking a wrong turn, because first you have to see what the problem is, and first you have to see, how are we going to solve it? And only then can you choose, okay, this is something that we need a model for. as well. So we should go a little bit slower and get out of model land first before we can answer. And I think one of the most important things that I can add to the conversation that is already going on, we need to be more transparent, of course. We need to be clearer about what we do. We need to be accountable. So all these things we know, right? It's not new. But for me, the biggest insight in what we can change is to be very clear and explicit what your values are and what you want to achieve. So for instance, if I go into a project, what I want to do is say, I want to contribute to water justice, and I want to make explicit what that means. And then I want to make explicit what that means in my practice. And I want to check whether my practice of modeling actually can help me to achieve realizing the values that I have, and also the values that we share then as a team. I think this is one of the most important things that is different from before, and it's also calling actually for a I think in your science you can also bring in your values. You don't need to be neutral. And this is what I want to share. I cannot be neutral anymore and bringing water justice to the front.
Yeah, indeed, the positionality of the developers does matter. Willem.
Yeah, I sometimes think that we make a error that we cannot solve in the very, very beginning of projects. We start framing challenges as water problems. That makes that we bring in the engineers who need to solve a water problem. Problems are never, ever water problems. They're always problems with societies, with livelihoods, with humans. And so if we start rephrasing those problems as water problems, we are on the path of the engineers. They will bring in the models and they will solve the water issue that's there. So the most important question is, why are we doing this? Doesn't get answered. And we give it in the hand of the experts that will do what experts will always do. They will create the models around it. But if the question why we need a model is not clear, that means that we basically gave away all the power that we have over what's the direction of a project should go into. We've given that to experts, to the people who can do the modeling. And then you lose control, of course, because they will, well, as I said, they will eat your budget.
Thank you, Willem. There are a couple of questions popping up. Keeping track with the time, I would like to draw your attention to this question that also aligns with what Tamerlan was emphasizing in his concluding remarks, that software is not the heart of the model. He challenged that perspective, and he emphasized that this question should be how models can be instrumental in bringing people with different epistemic understandings, for example, from hydrology, governance, or law. In line with that, a question emerged that should water modeling include human behavior? Any quick thoughts on it? Also, participants, please raise your hands if you have any interesting remarks to share.
I just answered it, but so I think I have an answer, but I don't think a model in itself needs human behavior. It depends on what you want to answer or what kind of things that are invisible you want to make visible. But my biggest take on it would say, get out of the model itself and see whether the modeling process from problematization to implementation needs more insights in human behavior. And for me, if we talk about water justice as well, for me, humanization or bringing the human as a central element is incredibly important, but it also means that you need to take the other, whoever they are, extremely serious. So from your from your colleague who maybe has information that you don't know or has an expertise that you don't understand that well, to the person you're working with in the field, take everybody as equally serious and don't go somewhere to tell this is the truth and this is how you should do things, but listen. And this is the most important thing, I think, in taking human behavior inside of a modeling process into account, from my perspective.
Thank you. And there are some interesting remarks and questions coming from Nimat, one of our participants. I would request our speakers and other participants to engage with Nimat in the chat. We can keep our chat open after 5 minutes of this event comes to an end. And looking at time, to conclude, how about this is an open question to our speakers and participants. How about we conclude opening a Pandora box that is on the AI issue? Should we have one quick round before we conclude that what opportunities and risks does this AI bring? And you can see big smiles on our speaker's face. So yeah, who would like to go first? I take that smiles as a nod. Yeah. Willem, would you like to go first? I see you unmuted yourself.
Okay. I think it's a classical mistake of using technology for what is actually not a technological problem. And so what seemed to come out of this discussion is that we need to have much more communication going on with people on the ground and with other stakeholders than just the water experts. And the world is bigger than just this tiny field of water management. And so if we introduce AI into a field that needs communication much more than anything else, we are introducing technology into a field that's not waiting for technology at the moment, I think. Floor is open for discussion.
Yes, Tamerlan. Very good thought, by the way. Yes, Tamerlan?
A little note on that. My view on AI is that it is useful to automate pipelines, like the processes, but in this case, we already have a problem that exclusion of people in models. And I think like the way the AI works, it automizes and it takes away that transparency, the human interference. So it kind of exacerbates that human exclusion problem in the model. That's my view on AI and the models in the models, application of models.
Thank you. So the sector does not need any more tech. It rather needs to create room for bringing other expertise who are known more as stakeholders or informal people, and also human interferences and interactions. Yes, Prerna.
Do I agree and disagree with your sentence, both ways? I think the sector definitely needs a lot more of other reflections and entry points. But I would say if done well and if done with good intentions and the right effort, tech could be the enabling factor in doing so. Like it could, as much as it could alienate people, if done right, it could also be the tool to bring people in and bring more voices in, to break the language barrier and accessibility barrier and literacy barriers. There is a whole scale of opportunities where having high level education is removed as a factor for you to engage if we use tech the right way. So I see a lot of potential to build a lot of good tech in this space to do what we want to do. But to do what we want to do what you're saying, to bring more voices in this conversation, in the process.
Rozemarijn. Before we give floor to Rozemarijn, Willem and Tamerlan, do you have any quick remark or reflection? Or you also see the Prerna's views is also legit on the flip side?
Well, my concern is that we already have models that exerting too much authority, and then adding to AI, that might, I don't know, like really contradicting kind of. When I think about it, now our role in these models will diminish, and that's not what I want to see in this creating models and working with them.
Thank you, Tamerlan. Willem, do you have any last remark? Otherwise, we give the floor to Rozemarijn to conclude.
I think Rozemarijn can conclude very well.
Okay.
I think I think the whole discussion is a little bit more nuanced than I am pushing it, of course. But I think we need to be careful with technology is not going to solve our real world problems here. That's, I think.
I think that also Prerna made it explicit in in her presentation.
Yeah.
Yes. Rozemarijn.
Yeah, thank you, Shanur, for bringing up a very complicated topic at the end of the. No, it's beautiful, and it also shows that thinking about models and technology will also help you think about AI. So that's super useful. I think two things I want to share very briefly is that through my research and critically engaging with models, I also really enjoy using models and thinking with models more and more. So the more I learn how to engage with them and I can use them in a way that I intend to do, the more I enjoy working with them. And the second is I was part of a research collective, a small research collective with young researchers, Rosella Alba, and among others, I will share the link. And I think the biggest check for me is, can we use models to foster thinking and to help us think so we become smarter ourselves instead of foregoing thinking? And this is an element that Jonathan Godinez, who was also part of this research collective, and Bertrand brought in. So for me, the big check is, does it foster my thinking? And can I still check what is happening? Or does it take over? And if it takes over, no, it will not help us. And I think for me, the same check with AI is important. So does it take over and can I check? Then can I not check? No. If it fosters thinking and I can still see what is happening, then yes, definitely use it, because it can open up new thoughts as well.
Thank you, Rozemarijn. We would look forward for those links. Oh, you already shared. Perfect. So, Dave, do you have any last remark or thoughts? Otherwise, we can thank our participants and speakers for their brilliant inputs.
No, I think this is a great moment to thank our participants and speakers. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you very much.
Yes, and the recording will be available from next week in the Water Channel website and also in its YouTube channels. We would also post the launch availability in our LinkedIn communications. And until the next episode, we hope to see many of you again, and stay in touch in LinkedIn, and let's unlearn and relearn about water along with our speakers and with you all. Thank you. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you
And
for
we
having
will.
us.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Pleasure. It's a pleasure, and we keep our chat open for the next 5 minutes for any critical reflection and feedback.